world's a bit weird at the moment. Do you agree? There's a lot of stuff going on. It's just, I don't know, headline news everywhere.
Yeah, at the end of the day, man, it's like it's just drama. Like everyone is just being so fucking dramatic. Yeah, it's bothersome.
Yeah, Mike.
You can't say anything over here right now without like. I mean, it's almost like America right now with this cancel culture shit is the equivalent of like a mob with the pitchforks and the torches, like going to like burn a witch down. You say something wrong and they're just all over you right now.
Well, just so you know, let's start recording now. Let's go from here. So anything else that's said will be on recording. So just so you're aware. But if we can just touch on that a little bit. I mean, when they stormed the Capitol, you as sort of former military, what was your thought and process, and what is going on with America when that happened? When the guy with the hat on and painted faces and they're all charging. What were your thoughts?
What a waste of time. It's just, there was no need for it. I understand people are upset and they have the right to protest. Just make sure that your protests are civil and that they have a point. That just created a mess for the nation that just didn't need to be there. And while I understand their viewpoint, there was just no need to storm the Capitol building.
Yeah, I mean, we watched that obviously on all the news channels and everything that went on, and just sort of shock and awe of what was happening, let alone pandemics and coronavirus. All that seemed to go out the window when all those crowds gathered. And we even have football teams, soccer teams over here just at the weekend winning trophies, and people are gathering, and safety and a lot of things seems to go out the window when people feel so strongly about stuff. And, we all kind of just, I think, a deep breath. Let's calm down a little. Let's get through this pandemic. Let's attack things when we need to in the right way and do things safely. The world, just every country seems to have something going on that impacts other countries and other views of countries and all sorts. It's just a weird time.
I think you just hit it, man. It's that people are getting so emotional, and I don't know what's causing that. So, dude, I don't know, and I know we have a mutual friend, Dean Stott. I don't know if it's our backgrounds in the military and having gone to war, but when things hit that are frustrating, it's almost like a shoulder lift. It's like, okay, like, COVID, all right, we've got to wear masks and we've got to social distance and we're going to carry on with our lives. But for some people, I get it. Like they've not experienced, such, I don't want to say trauma, but maybe such like trying adverse times, and they don't know how to react to it. But we are definitely in interesting times. You got to be careful what you say. And in the same, sort of light there, you've got to be empathetic to other people's perspectives. That's the thing right there. Let me hone in on that. People are entitled to their perspectives, whether you agree to them or not. They have a different set of life experiences. And honestly, like part of it is bringing a civility to any conversation, listen to their perspective, try to understand, seek to understand their perspective before passing judgment with your own opinions. And if you could do that, you could probably find the common ground and find solutions. But when your leadership, your senior leadership in the nation, which for us is Washington, D.C., can't even get along, talk about like setting the example from the top down, and it's not being set. And so when these Republicans and Democrats are going at it with no civility whatsoever, of course, the people just follow their lead and engage in very heated, emotional arguments that produce no solutions whatsoever.
Yeah. Is there enough from your, I don't know the ins and outs of the individual people too well, trying to keep an eye on how busy politics and everything is over here in the UK, but would you like to see sort of more military personnel, retired military personnel in the sort of the higher leadership ranks of US government?
So, as a military leader or a military member in general, you try to remain apolitical. At the end of the day, you follow the president. He's the commander in chief, whether he's a Democrat or a Republican, whether he served or she served in the military or not. That's your commander in chief.
Yeah.
and they do a good job. Our leaders set a good example of like, hey, I don't care what you vote inside the voter box. You keep that quiet. And if the president, whether you voted for that person or not, says we're going to war, we're going to war, and you're going to back them. And we're very good about that. I will tell you, I am very proud of some of the military leaders that have gone into politics because they've brought a pragmatic, non-emotional, completely logical, standpoint to the military. And I'm not saying this because this guy's a SEAL. There's other ones like Tom Cotton is a great example, but Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw is recognizable by the patch. He lost his eye in Afghanistan.
I think he's been on Rogan. Has he been on Rogan a few times? I think he's been on Joe.
I believe he has.
Yeah,
he has.
Yeah.
But I didn't serve with Dan. I didn't know Dan. Well, I've been on a phone call with him. But very, very logical, very pragmatic, and he has the ability to work with anyone on both sides. So he's representing the military well. But there's a reason why some of the best presidents in the United States have military service.
Yeah, it says a lot.
They learn to lead. They learn to lead.
Talking about, as you mentioned, Dean Stott at the start, a mutual friend of ours. What's it been like sort of catching up with Dean, sort of building that relationship? I know he's done a few things with you and Talent War Group and everything that he's getting into, but British Special Forces coming over and his sort of background and mentality. What's it been like sort of setting up that relationship and growing it with Dean?
So first off, Dean has a pretty awesome haircut. So naturally we get along. Like, hey, you're a pretty handsome dude. No, you know what, dude? There is, regardless of like what military you're in what country, there's a respect, like a war. You're from the warrior culture, regardless if you wear the American flag or the British flag. One, I know the SBS. We used to deploy with them. I hold them in high regards. Dean came highly recommended from a few of his SBS counterparts. And when your reputation is beyond reproach, when everyone's like solid, dependable team player, the individual and you are going to get along. And I expect great things from Dean, man. And Dean and I are working on a project right now with Men's Journal called The Everyday Warrior. And I don't, we're still in some negotiations, but I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. We've got some interesting trips and expeditions ahead of us, and we're Dean, I, and this other crew we're calling the Everyday Warrior Tribe. A lot of military members are trying to bring a different narrative. What we're just talking about, this division and divisiveness, we're going to try to set the example of just having respect for everyone, regardless of their view is wide, like 180 degrees out from your view. Is finding the commonalities rather than the things that differentiate you. For Americans, whether you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. You're an American at the end of the day. Try to find that commonality. And if you can't find it there, you're a human. So we're going to try to bring a very positive, very different message through this Everyday Warrior initiative. So I've had fun with Dean. And right now I know, as we said before we started recording, Dean's probably not sleeping, going on every news show to defend Harry in the wake of the Meghan and Harry interview.
It's almost a done thing, isn't it? That if you're going to put out a big story, it's on Oprah. Do you think we'll see him on a few? He's got his own podcast, I think, Harry and Meghan. They're going on Spotify. But I wonder how Harry would get on in front of Joe Rogan or even Jocko, because he is military. He's got military background.
You know what? I should contact Dean because we can make the Jocko one happen. I was just texting with Jocko. Brother, teammate, boss. I think that would be a good one. I think Joe Rogan is a slam dunk. I'll give you my opinion. Not that you asked for it. From the American side, from the military side, we hold Prince Harry in high regard for the fact that he didn't have to go to war, but he deployed. Well, I think he deployed twice, right? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. He decided to go forward, put himself in harm's way. We hold him in high regard. And Dean, because I respect Dean so highly. Dean's like, he's one of the most legitimate dudes you'll ever meet. He's good to go in my book. So, I hate to say your loss, our game. We're happy to welcome him with open arms into America. I just don't know why he chose California, man.
No, where are you based? Where are you right now? Because I know you guys travel so much, but where are you based right now?
So I was born and raised in California, Northern California, but right now, I think we're good. Austin, Texas, is where I live,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and I could not be happier.
Yeah, well, you mentioned your wife there, and I know you post a lot on Instagram and things like that. Let's give a shout out to the ladies in our lives because it's International Women's Day today, and it would.
That is right. She reminded me of that. I know it's Women's History Month, but absolutely, let's give them a shout out.
Yeah, so for me and Abby and my daughter Skylar, but a quick shout out for me to every female inspiring woman that's been on my podcast. There's been so many over the years, three and a bit years, all the guests from sporting backgrounds, from business, from entrepreneurship, all of them. Thank you for coming on, but just for the goodness that they spread. And Mike, in your life, obviously, there must be some influential women that have sort of kept you on the straight and narrow, should we say?
Absolutely. You know, the funniest thing is people make these, they make these assumptions of who I am and my mentality. And like, you know, they'll come up and be like, hey, women should never be in the SEALs. And I'm like, why not? If they can do the job, absolutely, they should be in the SEALs. I've sort of go with a mantra of like, I don't care if you're a man, a woman. I don't care if you're black or white. I don't care if you're gay or straight. If you're the highest performer, then we will follow you. If you have the best idea, then we're going with your idea, regardless of your demographics. But I've had some strong female leaders that have shaped me as a leader. One, it starts with mom, and you know this since you have a daughter. I have a daughter. You could be this completely masculine, defined individual until you have a daughter, and you're like, my daughter can do whatever she wants. If she wants to be a Navy SEAL, then I'm going to help her like become a Navy SEAL. But I'm never going to tell her that she can't do anything because she's a woman. And so, you know, whatever strong images, you know, of women I can put in front of my daughter, I'm absolutely going to do that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for mentioning mums there. I forgot to mention mine. Mine will definitely listen to this podcast when it comes out. So, Mum, love you. Thank you for keeping me in the straight and narrow. And yeah, Dean, God, I've got Dean Stott in my brain. Mike, it's something that through rugby, I'm a big rugby fan and used to play quite a lot through here. So, female rugby, there's so much good thing going on in female sport at the moment that, yeah, International Women's Day, it's important. Congratulations to all the women out there that just achieve such high standards, whether it be military, sport. But I'm involved with a lot of media, and thanks to all the guests that have joined me on my show. Mike, I was tied to my seat and couldn't move from the car to the house to my desk. Jocko 134, your podcast. I'm sure you've been on several times, but Jocko 134. That was some hard listening at points. It was enthralling. It was inspiring. That podcast that you did back then with Jocko and Echo, it was. I need to talk about it, and I'm hoping that you can take us back through your story, back through how you got into the military, some of the dark days that you went through, some of the high days, and sometimes the times that you had to sort of front up, you know, and become a man. That you maybe the challenges in front of you thought, how am I going to get through this? But that's what the Get After It podcast is all about. It's about me and interviewing and chatting to inspiring people that have got incredible stories that have got them to today. So can you take us back that sort of through where you started, and sort of for my listeners in the UK who might not be as familiar with your story, to give us a sort of background to you and how you got to today?
Yeah, you know, for the prior listeners, my story is a lot like Dean's in the sense of our path through the military. But you know, Dean came from modest upbringing. I came from what we call an upper middle class family in the United States, especially in the Bay Area, and I did something very uncharacteristic of the kids in my town. Is where they usually go off to college. I enlisted in the Marine Corps because I met a forced Recon Marine who I thought was like the like consummate human, and I wanted to be like him. You know, I was probably like 130 pounds at the time, and here you've got this strapping, you know, 190 pound muscle bound guy who's polite to everyone. He's humbly confident, and I'm like, bro, I want to be that guy. And he was in the Marines, so I'm like, I'm going into the Marine Corps, and I did make it into the Recon community, which was their version of special operations. Also had the fortunate pleasure of becoming a Marine sniper. But while I was serving as a Marine, then I met some Navy SEALs. And every time the Navy SEAls walk in the room, people are always like, oh, they those are the SEALs. They go through the world's toughest military training. And dude, it was my ego, 100% my ego that said, nope, can't have that, can't accept that, can't have that somebody's better than I am. I've got to go try out for the SEALs and prove that I have what it takes as well. And so the Marines had sent me back to college to become an officer in the Marine Corps. And I went to Marine Officer Candidate School, did very well, set some records there. And then before I took a commission in the Marine Corps, I said, hey, listen, I want to go try out for the SEALs. And the Marine Corps was actually pretty good about it. They said, okay, we'll get you an inter-service transfer to go become a Navy officer and try out for the SEALs. The only thing that I asked was like, don't quit. You will embarrass the Marine Corps. Same thing probably with Dean, with like when he left the Commandos to go try out for SBS, they said, just don't quit. And so made it into the SEALs, made it to SEAL Team 3, where Jocko Willink, the author of Extreme Ownership and the Jocko podcast host, as well as Leif Babin, were at. And I did 3 deployments at SEAL Team 3. On my second deployment, ended up in the Battle of Ramadi with Jocko, and lost some dear friends. And as you're referring to podcast 134, which I did not go back and listen to, because it was just, when I walked out of that podcast, I was just, my emotions, I had an adrenaline dump. I was done for the day. I went back to my hotel and just slept from like 2 p.m. until the next morning. But on the final mission of the Battle of Ramadi for us, because we were going home, we were in a very bad neighborhood, which we had operated in before. And we took a very prominent building and we took the rooftop, which most of the roofs in Iraq are flat with these parapet walls around them. Why are they flat? They have very little rainfall. So it doesn't necessitate, traditional homes that you see in modern society, especially the environments we live in. And we were in a gunfight with the enemy. There was a lull between the gunfights. And while we were holding security, waiting for the next gunfight to start, an enemy combatant snuck close to the building and threw a grenade up, and it just made it over the lip of the wall because we were on the 3rd level. And it hit Mikey Mansour in the chest, bounced in front of him. And Mikey, myself, and another SEAL were very close together because it was an advantageous position in terms of line of sight. And Mikey made the most selfless decision any human can make. He knew if he dove the other direction, he would save his life. But myself and the other SEAL, who were seated and couldn't maneuver quickly enough, would eat the grenade to the face and undoubtedly perish. So he yelled a grenade and dove down on it and absorbed the majority of the blast. The SEAL to the left, and I was to his right, we still had a lot of shrapnel in the legs, couldn't walk, and then the enemy was launched a attack to try to take our position and kill the remaining Americans. Myself, the other SEAL, and one more SEAL, kill all the Americans in the building. So we had to hold them off until reinforcements could get to us, which were pretty much all wounded. Only 1 out of the 4 SEALs was mobile to move and actually fire back. The rest of us couldn't stand up. And that was really my career, man. You're full of, as we say, piss and vinegar when you're a young soldier and you want to go to war. And we all had a purpose, just like you guys. I mean, we all, after 9/11, we knew we had a purpose. We had to go eradicate evil where it stood. And while there's purpose behind what we do, when you watch a buddy jump on a grenade like that stays with you. There's no getting rid of that. There is what I will say, you can compartmentalize that trauma for so long. And I was wildly embarrassed and felt just a degree of shame that, I can't even articulate, because I was the senior guy on that rooftop, and our most junior guy, Mikey Mansour, had to jump on the grenade to save us, for which he was awarded the Medal of Honor, which is the highest award in the United States. He received it posthumously post-death. His family was there in Washington, D.C. to receive it. But I buried that down and continued on to do 8 more deployments after that deployment. So 8 more combat deployments. I had a total of 10 combat deployments. I made it into the British version of SBS. We call it JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command over here in the United States. 2 units fall within that command. Names we won't mention, but deployed. Most of my combat deployments were with them. And then each deployment, we continued to lose brothers. And one of the most notable ones was Extortion 17 on August 6th of 2011. 31 Americans were on the helicopter, mostly SEALs from a specific unit. And that was my old troop. I deployed with them the deployment to Afghanistan. Before that, I was in a different location, and all of them brothers. And to lose, 21 brothers like that in the snap of a finger. Again, I was not none of us were the same. I sort of shut down for 2 weeks. Somebody had to pull me out of that little funk because I was overseas leading guys and I didn't realize it, but I just stopped communicating beyond what was necessary for the job. And so somebody woke me up and I had to compartmentalize that. And again, I continued to deploy to war. We continue to lose guys. And then, again, it goes back to when you're young, you're all piss and vinegar. You want to go to war, you want to fight the enemy. And then what you don't realize is that it comes with impacts. Nobody walks away from war the same. And when I finally decided, I put my sword in the sand and said I was done. That's when things started to get dark, dude, for about 2 years. And unpacking that trauma, I say I compartmentalized everything. It was like a pot that boiled over. And so you have to unpack that trauma and you either deal with it in order to get better, or you just sort of put yourself in this victim category and you stay there and you become a miserable human being to be around. But that's not what I was going to do. Plus 2 kids. I'd met a wonderful woman who became my wife. So I had reasons to get better and to get back to the human I was in the SEALs, a high performing individual who just loves challenges. But I think, my brothers who are on the walls behind me and all that, it'll stick with me. But I've just got to find the positive in their sacrifice and in the lives that they lived, and remember that as I get up every morning. And the fact is, I'm here and they're not. And if I waste even a day, it's sort of a disgrace to their memory.
It's thank you for explaining that the way you did and taking us through that, because I know I can tell when I listened to the Jocko podcast with you and now hearing that it wiped you out. The emotion that you talked about and the great detail you went into with Jocko was heart-wrenching to the point of what you've been through. But how is that, once you got through those 2 dark years of the Mikey incident and then losing the troop and things like that, can you take us to being a dad, And already you did say that, if your kids did want to go through the SEALs or go into the military, it's how do you decompartmentalize that? Because me sitting here as a dad thinking my kids might one day want to go join the military, because not that I have ever been in that world, but I'm surrounded by a lot of guys and ladies that are, and they might want to take that route. You've been there. You've seen the suffering. You've seen death. It's a very brave thing to say that you'll back children. And how do you do that yourself as a dad?
So, at the end of the day, it's Hollywood that is the best recruiting tool for the military. They're like Black Hawk Down and, Navy SEALs, or the recent, Green Beret movie that came out about the invasion of Afghanistan. I'm forgetting the title. They make war look cool. For a young kid, they're like, yeah, I want to go do that. How do you explain to the kids the things that the movies are not accurate about and the impacts it has in your life? And that's hard to do. But I will tell you this up front: if my kids never serve, that will be a load off my back, because I will never have to worry about them. I saw what it did to my old man, who's one of the toughest dudes I know. But when I came home wounded on my second deployment and I continued to deploy, you could tell the pressure it put on my mom and my dad. And I hope to God I never have to feel that same sense of burden and worry about my children. But I'm not going to glorify the war. I'm not. While I loved it in a sense, and being surrounded by just some of the most amazing men and women I've ever met. And again, we deployed with a purpose. We knew why we were there. I've got to describe to my kids that it comes at a cost. Everything comes at a cost. All victories come at a cost, and that's the loss of life. But we sheltered, and I'm divorced now, and my kids live with their mom in Virginia Beach, where I was last stationed. But we did a great job of shielding them from the military lifestyle. I mean, they never lived on a base because the SEALs allow you to live out in town. But we tried to shelter them as much as we could. At the end of the day, I was gone 300 days out of the year every year, and sometimes gone for like 4 or 6 months straight on deployment. So they knew there was a lack of dad around. But I didn't come home. I didn't talk about it with them. My son and my daughter knew, but they didn't really ask all that many questions. And if they did, I was just sort of vague about it. Now, as they get older, if they come and ask, I will be much more descriptive about what went on in my thoughts, and ultimately not to sway them one way or the other, but to give them the facts as I see it and let them think critically of whether the military is a path for them or not. But as of right now, it looks like it's not. So I'm thankful.
Absolutely. It's you worry about your kids, don't you? You worry about what route they're going to take. You've got to sort of let them make their own decisions, but guiding them down routes that we think might be safer is just sort of the role of mum and dad. And I hear you. It can't be easy if you've, I mean, my kids might go into real estate or property or podcasting. That's what I've got to worry about. There's something there that it's like, well, okay, if they follow my route. But Mike, that time when you lost Mikey, can you go into just a little bit of the aftermath of that? How did you get off the roof? Who came and helped you? How quickly did support come when you were getting attacked? When you've just seen what's happened, your training, did it just kick in of how you've got to react now and save your own lives? And did the adrenaline hit of what Mikey had just done for you guys there and then, or did that all sort of come to pass later? What happened?
So, I'm sure the adrenaline hit, but I sure as hell felt the pain more than I felt the adrenaline when the grenade went off. So, one, to take it back, we deviated from how we were running missions for those 6 months because this was the last mission. And we actually cut away half of our guys to go prepare like what we call the pallets to put on the airplanes to go home. So we went out in 2 observation posts or sniper positions, each with 4 SEALs, when we actually should have had 8 in each position, not 4. And we also had some Iraqi troops with us. So I don't know why, looking back, I think it was because we had brought such hurt on the enemy. We had been through 6 months of fighting that we overestimated our capability. And we deviated from a playbook that was a proven playbook. So we're at what you call minimum manning. And that one grenade, when it came over the roof, literally took 3 of the 4 SEALs and made them combat ineffective. While Mikey was unconscious, myself and the other SEAL, we couldn't stand up. When the grenade went off, it sort of picked me up and flipped me over. And all I felt was absolute pain in my legs. It felt like my legs were on fire, quite frankly. So I remember I put my head on the deck and sort of just bit the pain and immediately looked back in Mikey's direction and yelled for Mikey to get a response. I think I yelled Mikey 3 times and just his eyes were open. He was looking my direction, but just nothing. And shortly after the grenade went off, we started taking incoming machine gun fire, and you could hear it impacting the wall. Thank God we were behind that parapet wall. And I went to my radio to call for help. There was a SEAL position that was 800 meters away, maybe a little less, and there was 4 SEALs with their Iraqi troops on there. And actually, let me step back from that. When the grenade went off, the Iraqi troops that were with us on the roof, none of them were wounded. They ran away. They ran into the building and down. There was one Iraqi who spoke perfect English, and I'll get to him. So when we're taking fire, Mikey's hurt critically. I go to the radio, and the radio doesn't work. The grenade had put the radio into like a shutdown mode. And so when you turn on that specific radio, it goes through a procedure where it has to reboot. And sometimes it takes like 45 seconds to a minute to be able to use it. I couldn't wait, 1 minute. We needed help now, or we were going to get overrun. And so I don't know what to do. And I'm looking around. I'm just suffering. The pain is just excruciating. I ended up having 30 holes, some through and through in the leg. And I saw that Iraqi, who was the leader of their Iraqis, and he was in a fetal position, just fetal position from fear. And I don't blame him. So I know they had Motorola's, and that means that the Iraqis with the other SEAL position would have their Motorola's on as well, Motorola radios. So I haven't even looked at my legs yet. And I tried to push myself up and, bring the legs up and start running. Well, I, pushed my upper body up, and my legs wouldn't work. And I went right down onto my face. And so I looked at I finally built up the courage to look at my legs to see if they were still there. They were still there. So I crawled over, because my legs wouldn't work, to the Iraqi, and I just grabbed the Motorola off his H gear, and then called to a guy named Seth Stone, who was the leader of the other position. I said, "Hey, we're hit. We're being overrun. Mikey's hurt bad. We need help now." And Seth said, "Hold on, we're coming." I also knew that the Motorola worked for other Iraqi units who always have Americans with them, and sort of put out a all net call that, this is all net, means anyone on the net. This is who we are. This is our position. We're hit bad. We need a medevac now. What it turns out is that Leif Babin, the co-author of Extreme Ownership, was miles away in the JOC, had heard what was going on, and he actually knew we were in help. So forward thinking, he activated a medevac to start moving to our position regardless. And it seemed like it took Seth an hour to get to our position. In reality, it probably took him anywhere from probably about 5 minutes. But the one SEAL who's a good friend and just a warrior to the core, the one SEAL who was who was not wounded, was picking up Mikey's machine gun, returning fire. We'd help reload. Myself and the other wounded SEAL tried to pull Mikey away from the wall as best as possible, and telling him to hold on. And eventually the Iraqis started to come up to the roof. The Iraqi soldiers came back and started firing. And so we held our position until the other SEALs got there, and then they came up. One of them grabbed Mikey, two grabbed me, so I had my arms, and they put me in the front because I knew the house and I knew a back way out to an adjacent street. And so while I'm in pain, I'm telling them which way to go. And God bless the Army, dude. There was a Bradley fighting vehicle outside with its ramp dropped waiting for us. And they threw myself, the other wounded SEAL, and then Mikey into the back of the Bradley. One SEAL joined us, and it was the SEAL that had carried Mikey down from the third story. And he was absolutely exhausted. He was near exhaustion from carrying. When you carry a lifeless body,
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a dead weight. And Mikey was not a small kid, about 6'2", 215 pounds, Southern California kid, handsome as could be. And when the SEAL got in the Bradley with us, he sort of like sat down and took a break. And I remember yelling at him. I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like, start chest compressions. And he sort of snapped to. And I started chest compressions on Mikey, and it took us a while to get to a first aid station. And they extracted all three of us out of the back of the Bradley. The surgical unit started working on Mikey immediately. And, the funny thing was, because we were so close to deploying home, our corpsman, which is like your medic for your unit, we actually sent him home two weeks early from the deployment. Well, the morphine we use that you're supposed to use if you get wounded, it's a serialized item, meaning he actually has to sign for each of the Sarrailles. And so when he returned home, he actually had to take those back because he's legally responsible for each of those Sarrailles. And we thought nothing of it. We're like, oh yeah, here you go, dude, right on. And so when I was wounded and I went for my morphine, which I used to keep in my little pocket on my right foot or the right lower leg, it wasn't there. So, we went about 30, 45 minutes of just like that burning metal and just the pain in the legs, which I'm not complaining. And we didn't get morphine until we got to that medical unit. And I remember the Army gave me administered morphine and I felt nothing. And I remember I grabbed the medic by the, sort of the shirt right here. And basically, I'm like, dude, you got to hit me again, dude. I'm in pain. They gave me some more morphine and I was just out. And then from there, it was a path of they brought a helicopter in because they didn't have the surgical capability to work on us. They took us to another area along with Mikey's body. And before they rushed myself and the other SEAL into surgery, they gave us 5 minutes with Mikey. They laid our stretchers down next to his stretcher and gave us 5 minutes just to, I guess, say thank you and then say goodbye. And even though we were in pain, I mean, we had some morphine. 5 minutes probably wasn't long enough. We could have stayed there as long as possible, but they had to get the shrapnel out of our legs as quickly as possible. So I was thankful for those 5 minutes that we had with Mikey.
Yeah, thank you for telling that story, because it's I don't know, it's so heartfelt from you, and it's real life, and it's how scary war can be. It's something that obviously isn't easy for you to talk about. So I really appreciate that, Mike.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate that. Can I ask you about another soldier? And the name that I got from the Jocko podcast was Ryan Job. Is that somebody? Because I want you to take us down a quick route of what you do now and helping veterans find employment and working with big corporations to hire the best possible people. And Ryan Job is a guy that I heard on that podcast with Jocko that you probably didn't think would make the cut.
No, and I probably wasn't too kind to him either. I passed judgment, and because I passed judgment on what he looked like, my treatment towards him was probably not so kind. Dude, the military, I took to the military quick. When I went to Marine boot camp, I'm like, you know what? I think I like this environment. I understood how to maneuver in it. I finished number 1 out of boot camp called the Honor Man. I finished number 1 out of almost every course in the Marine Corps. And so I built a reputation. And as a young, I was mid-20s when I went through BUDS. I'd already had this reputation. The other students highly respected me because I was a Recon Marine that was switching over the SEALs. And maybe I built a little arrogance. No, it built arrogance. And so I'm going through BUDS, and so is Ryan Job. And I thought, for whatever reason, because I was a prior Marine Recon guy, their version of special operations, that I knew what a SEAL looked like. And there are minimum physical standards to get into to BUDS. Let me put it this way: nobody knows how Ryan passed those standards. He did not look the part. Ryan was a very hefty, shorter kid. And I remember at one time, because Ryan drew the attention of the instructors, and sometimes the instructors would beat us because of Ryan's shortcomings. And so naturally that turns the class against Ryan. At one point I told Ryan, I'm like, hey man, for the good of all of us, just quit. You're not going to make it anyways. And save us from having to do extra push-ups or being cold because you want to stick around for a week or two. And Ryan said, okay, thank you for telling me that. But to jump ahead of the end of Hell Week, which is the part of SEAL training where the majority of the kids get dropped. You go from like 250 in your class down to like 30 or 20. And at the end of Hell Week, while 35, I think it was like 35 of us are standing there. I look down the line, and who else other than Ryan Jobe is standing there, you know, with a smile on his face. There was no quit in this kid. He got beat more than all the other students. And it was to the point where the instructors paid him a lot of extra attention, which in basic underwater demolition school SEAL training, you do not want extra attention from the instructors. And people had judged him all his life, and he just never quit. He went on to become a SEAL. He ended up in SEAL Team 3 in Jocko's task unit Bruiser. And it wasn't until 2 years after Buds that we're in Ramadi that I had the opportunity to go to Ryan and said, hey, I was 100% wrong about you. You are a warrior to the core. And I'm sorry that I passed judgment. And so I apologized to him in Ramadi. And he's like, dude, don't worry about it. He's like, you and everyone else has been judging me all my life. And, you know, for those that have read the book Extreme Ownership or seen the movie American Sniper, Ryan was during a combat operation, a very bad day. He was on a rooftop laying down gunfire from his machine gun. There was an enemy sniper that nobody saw, took a shot, actually hit Ryan's machine gun, which threw some metal off the machine gun into Ryan's right eye. And he lost the right eye instantly. The guy stabilized him, called in a tank, threw him in the back of the tank. And Ryan, because he needed serious surgery, they had to get him to Germany as quickly as possible. During that 24-hour transit from Iraq to Germany, the pressure in his head was so severe that it crushed the optic nerve in the left eye. And when he arrived in Germany, the doctors thought, he was like, well, we think you may regain sight in the left eye. But after 30 days, they knew sight was gone. So he was shot in the face. He was blind. He lost the sense of smell, the sense of taste. And where most people would quit and feel like victims and just play the victim card all their life, Ryan became one of the most resilient people that I've ever known. I mean, he finished his bachelor's in business with a 4.0 blind. He shot and killed a trophy buck blind. He climbed Mount Rainier blind. And he went through multiple surgeries, surgery after surgery. And he just had this attitude, like, I'm alive. I'm thankful. Every day I'm on this earth, I'm thankful to be alive. And he was resilient. His attitude was one of gratitude, and he was one of the most positive people I've ever met. But unfortunately, Ryan, I think it was something like his 22nd or 24th reconstructive surgery to his face in 2009. The same week he found out he was having a child with his high school sweetheart who he married. He went into that surgery. There were complications after the surgery. He aspirated in his sleep. And we sort of call him the last casualty of Ramadi because it happened in 2009. But that's, the SEALs judged Ryan for how he looked, and we could not have been more wrong. And that's why people, when it translates to the business world, people look at people's resumes and automatically throw them in the trash can, because resumes don't tell you about someone's character. Resume tells you about their experience and where they've been, but it does not point to their character. Experiences will tell you where somebody's been. Character will tell you where somebody's going. And Ryan had no lack of character whatsoever.
And how these days, sort of in the business world, do you find out what someone's character's like? What sort of routes do you take to find out what you're going to get from somebody?
So my business partner and I wrote a book called The Talent War, which hit bestseller in a number of categories on Amazon. And it's all about how special operations goes about assessing and selecting talent into their community. And it's not based on experience whatsoever. It's all based on character and a set of attributes that they're looking for in their hires. Well, how do you apply that to the business world? One, a lot of the business world, they don't even know what they're looking for. They're looking for a salesperson, and they haven't really created this talent profile of like, what makes a great salesperson? What does he or she have in terms of the attributes that increase the probability that they'll be highly successful in that role? So if you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what your outcomes look like, then don't even engage in the hiring process, because you're just going to hire somebody for likability. You can't, in a business hiring setting, take your potential candidates down to the ocean and get them wet and sandy. Now, the whole reason we do that in special operations training is not because we're sadistic and we like to put people into situations where they're filled with pain. No, it's to push them to their mental and physical limits, because it's at one's mental and physical limits that true character emerges. You've probably heard the phrase, adversity reveals character, it doesn't build it. That's what we're looking for. What are you made of? Do you have the ability, the attributes to push through pain, to accomplish the mission no matter what? So in the business setting, you have to have what we call a multivariate process. So it's not just an interview. You're taking personal assessments to try to pull out what attributes they do have. And then you can marry that with the interview process. Maybe you give them homework assignments to see their level of diligence or how much work they're going to put into an evaluation you want them to do. Here's a company, do an evaluation of whether we should invest in that company. Or, hey, here's a client, a potential client from the sales funnel. Tell us how you would approach that client. There's role play, as in, you want to make somebody uncomfortable. Say, hey, we're going to go through a little role play scenario where I'm an angry customer and you're the salesperson that has to solve that problem and maintain that relationship. You want to make sure that you have a lot of tools at your disposal to put somebody through in order to make a more educated decision as to whether this person is right for the job or not. Now, you can apply a little pressure. Time is one thing you can utilize, is put time limits on somebody for their answers and make them uncomfortable. You're not, again, you're not trying to be unprofessional, but you want to make somebody uncomfortable in order to see their true character. Why would you want to do this? Well, look at COVID. Some organizations thought they had the best employees in the world. And then when COVID hit, those employees were not capable of making decisions in what we call a VUCA environment, defined by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And some people could not operate in this environment, and they sort of went into the stage of paralysis through analysis. So having employees in your organization that are capable of dealing with the stress, that are driven. I mean, we broke down 9 attributes that we found were a common thread of high performers in any industry, from the SPS and the Navy SEALs to an investment banker. And ultimately, that's what you want to choose. Not the smart guy from Oxford who had a 4.0, who's the smartest guy in the room, who can't work with anyone. While that individual may be extremely smart and intellectual horsepower matters, ultimately, if he can't make decisions in a very chaotic situation, then he's going to be no good to the organization whatsoever. So don't become, just like Ryan Job, don't become infatuated with the way that somebody looks, what university they came from, the way they speak, whether you like them or not. That's another thing. Likability is not a good factor for hiring somebody. It's not at all. There's a lot of SEALs that I didn't particularly like, and they probably didn't like me. But at the end of the day, we could come together as professionals and we could accomplish the mission no matter what, working together, putting our needs aside so that the overall organization won. And at the end of the day, come the weekend, they would go their way, I'd go my way. So that's why we say likability is completely overrated. Now, if somebody is a complete asshole, then you're probably not going to bring them into the organization, because they'll alienate the people around them, and they'll most definitely alienate the customers.
Take it, how would you deal with someone that maybe got into one of your troops or your teams that was an asshole, that you realized actually this guy isn't pulling his weight? What were you like with them?
So we definitely had those types that made it through SEAL training and were not team players, and maybe they were arrogant, maybe they were the smartest man in the room, and maybe they were just an asshole. It's amazing what peer pressure from the rest of the group can do to get somebody in line. And we would usually tell them, like, hey, bro, the way you're acting right now is unacceptable. And if you can't put your needs aside for the good of the entire team, you're not going to have a place here for very long. And we lay out a plan. Here's what we want to see over the next 3 months to see an improvement in your attitude and your behavior. And if that doesn't happen, we're going to put you up in front of a board to get you out of the community. And when somebody has the threat of losing the title SEAL, you'll see behaviors change really quickly. Now, that's a last resort. We don't want to have to go there. Hopefully it's just a conversation of like, hey, you can't act this way. You're detracting from the team environment. And if you don't change it, then we'll have to take action. But we would address those head on. The worst thing you can do is just hope he'll change his behaviors or her behaviors without actually providing feedback whatsoever.
Yeah. What were you like yourself taking instruction, or when you had leaders around you like Jocko or Seth? Were you good at listening, or what were you like in your younger years compared to your sort of end of your career?
So, when you have a senior special operations guy who you highly respect, it's very easy to listen. Very easy to listen to Jocko, man. He had a solid reputation. He was a strong leader. He was highly respectful to everyone. He was a leader you wanted to emulate. So that part's easier. I think when I was younger, listening to maybe peers or my subordinate leaders, because some bad habits in the military were driven into me, I probably wasn't such a good listener. I probably directed them to do things. I gave them orders. They obeyed. That was the extent of our relationship. But as I got older, I recognized sort of what, let's call it the path of enlightenment, that I realized there's so much I don't know. And because I may have 10 years in the SEALs, and this younger, SEAL who's only been in for 2 years, just because I've been in for 10 years does not mean I have all the answers. Again, it goes back to they have a set of life experiences, they have perceptions, they have their own opinions. And I would start to listen a lot more. And when I started opening my ears and using less of this, I started to become a much better SEAL than I was. And, you can learn from everyone. One of the things I do for the company I run, EF Overwatch, which you alluded to, which is an executive search firm that places very high performing veterans into business management positions. I've got a lot of like 21 to 23-year-old employees. And on day one, I let them know, you are a leader within this organization. You may have just gotten out of college, but that doesn't matter. You've got your perceptions, you've got your opinions. I need you to voice them, and I need you to lead. And it's had an amazing impact on their behaviors, and it maturates them very quickly. I mean, we put a lot of training into our people in the private sector to increasingly elevate the bar on them. But I think also, I'm going to be honest with you, man, I've had a lot of time to reflect on, again, all the buddies I've lost and all the combat deployments. And there's a lot of regret there. I would have done a lot of things differently. And so I think that's really, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to just say, it's mellowed me out. It's mellowed me out in the sense that, hey, if I have a team of 10, that means I have a brain trust of 10 people. Any problem I give them, they will solve faster and better than I can. So when we face a problem now as a leader, I give it to my team. I'm like, hey, here's the problem. What do you think we should do? And I just listen. And usually the 10 of them collectively come up with a better plan than I ever could imagine. And so that's really changed how I've thought about leadership. And even though I came from the world's greatest leadership development platform, I'm still learning this process, dude. You're learning leadership until the day you freaking die. Anyone who says they have leadership figured out is wrong. And even though you led maybe in one industry over here and you were highly successful, it doesn't always translate to an industry over here. Sometimes it's a different environment. You have to relearn how to learn or to lead. While some of the principles do translate, the application of leadership is never the same. It's different for every environment. It's different for every scenario we enter into.
How's COVID affected EF Overwatch and Echelon Front? I mean, is everything now Zoom? Are you getting out and a bit more now? You getting to travel yet in the States? Or because the leadership group at Echelon Front, I mean, you've got such high performing leaders that the companies must be desperate to get you guys back in the boardroom, get the seminars, and get their people in front of you guys.
So, I'm not like, hey, it was Mike Shirley's idea, but I remember when COVID hit, because most of what we do at Echelon Front is in person. We come in for long-term consulting engagements, it's in person. Yeah. If we come in to speak to a group or do a workshop, it's in person. So when COVID hit, that completely took that away. And again, a great model of leadership is Jocko turned to the group and said, okay, what do we do? Jocko didn't have to say, turn to us and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. No, he said, what do we do? And I looked at him and I'm like, we need to go virtual. And his next response to that was, okay, how do we do that? And, the rest of the group put their heads together and we went virtual. And this has also been a period where Leif has worked on EF Online. EF Online is an online leadership development platform. And Jocko and Leif go live on that platform like 3 times a week at like 1 p.m. Central on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so they can interact directly with Jocko. But they've built that up. I think the followership has just drastically increased since the start of COVID. The in-person engagements will come back, but what we didn't do is we didn't flip out, we didn't panic, we innovated and adapted. We knew we couldn't do in-person events, so we identified, hey, virtual platforms are the way to go, and we doubled down on that. Now on the EF Overwatch side, there was some sleepless nights, dude. I naturally thought the economy was going to dip, which it did, and that people were going to stop hiring, but they didn't. We've actually had some of our largest months on record during COVID in terms of placements. People are actually hiring. Some industries were insulated for some reason from the impacts of COVID, and we've grown in 2020 substantially. Where I think our headcount went from 2, we're now at a headcount of 10. So we added 8 people since the start of COVID.
How far ahead did you plan your life after the military? Or was it something that you got into and thought in those dark 2 years when you left? Were you thinking about where I'm going to go when I leave the military one day? Or did it all sort of have to find its, did you just find your way once you'd left?
Not one bit.
Really?
Like, bro, when I was still, all those combat deployments, I was still trying to get revenge for Mikey. I was still trying to somehow clean my slate of the shame that came with that incident. And funny enough, after my 10th deployment, guys thought I was good for another 20 years in the military, or another 10, years in the military, that I'd come back and take a squadron. And that's what I thought I was going to do. But when, like, I hit a wall. For me, on that 10th combat deployment, like, I hit a wall. I thought I had like 5 or 10 more deployments left in me. I was wrong. And my energy just went. So I was forced with, okay, what am I going to do now? The military did hook me up, and they stationed me in Austin, Texas, where there is no base. And I was an instructor to future officers. And during my time, during those 2 years, I got my MBA from the University of Texas. So I had 2 years to figure it out. But even then, it wasn't easy, because I kept like meeting these people from different industries. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I definitely don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I think it was almost a process of elimination for me, is that I eliminated all the things I didn't want to do until I ended up with like, okay, here are my 5 options. And I stumbled onto executive search, which is a form of senior recruiting. And when I met somebody from executive search, they talked about building high performing teams. And I'm like, I know a little about that, SEALs, Marines, JSOC. And I'm like, I'm actually really passionate about that, and fell into it. And then, even more so is Jocko and Leif came to me and they're like, bro, come on board as a leadership instructor. And I'm like, I'm passionate about leadership. And so things worked out for me. But there's a lot of vets, man, where it's like a 5-year process once they get out of the military. Is they're taking these different jobs, they're figuring out where their passion is, and that's okay, dude. That's fine. That doesn't mean you're a failure, or that you're not on a good path. You're just finding your next passion, and that takes time.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of athletes and former rugby players, sports stars, similar journey. It can be tough getting out of your profession.
It's the same exact thing. And I've talked to a lot of professional athletes. It's an identity change. It's an identity crisis. Is you identified as a professional rugby player, or you identified as a SEAL, and now that's over. And it's not like we can retire either. You've got to go get another job.
Yeah.
And dude, that takes a just somebody with a lot of emotional strength to go through that transition. Yeah. And I didn't handle it well up front, I'll be honest.
Away from work, Mike, sport, are you into jiu-jitsu as well? Are you wrestling Jocko on the mats, or what's your time?
So everyone assumes that. So I just had a hip replacement.
Okay.
In December. Boxing was I love boxing, dude. Did I used to roll? I mean, we used to have combatives in the SEALs. Absolutely. Enjoyed it. I mean, who doesn't love trying to choke out their brother on the mat for, bragging rights? But for me, it's boxing, man. And even though I had one hip replacement, the other one's probably about 3 years off. When I try to roll, I'm just in my hips are in pain. So right now I'm doing yoga.
So am
Yeah.
I. So am I. That's my new thing. Yoga, stretching, flexibility. Struggle to touch my toes, which is embarrassing.
Yeah, dude. My session on Friday, I do the hot yoga where the room is like 106 to 109, and it's only 75 minutes long. But I almost looked at like these 60-year-old and 50-year-old women who are just like going through it. I'm sweating, and I'm like, I think I need to step out into the lobby to get some cool air. I'm like, what's wrong with you people? No, dude. I've got a lot of respect for the people that are doing hot yoga, man. So I've got a long way to go.
That's it. Well, Mike, here we've covered a lot. I've taken up more time than I said I would, but I really appreciate your time. It's been awesome. I love hearing how well Dean's doing over in the States now, and your story from everything you've been through. It's inspiring. So thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, brother, thanks for having me.
Not at all. All the best.